Welcome back to another episode of the Four Archetypes. And we are back with our story, The Arabian Nights. Um, and we're going to start with the story of the Enchanted Prince today. So, without further ado, Dr. Eric, take us away.
The Tale of the Enchanted Prince. My story with these fish is wonderful. It is so strange that if you were to carve it with a needle in the corner of the eye, it would be a warning to the wise. You see, my lord, my father was the king of this city. His name was King Mahmud of the Black Isles. These four hills were islands. And he ruled for 70 years. When he died, I took the throne and married my uncle's daughter, who adored me to the point that if I left her for a single day, she would not eat or drink till I returned. We lived together for 5 years until one day when she was at the baths, I asked the cook to grill some meat and to prepare a feast. Then I came to this palace, lay down where you are sitting now, and asked two servant girls to fan me, one at my head, one at my feet. But I was anxious and could not find sleep. As I lay there, eyes shut, breathing deeply, I heard the girl who fanned my head say to the one who fanned my feet, "Masuda, I feel sorry for our master, still so young. What ashamed about that wife of his." "Don't," said the other. "There is a place in hell for girls who lie and cheat. Poor man, so young and married to that whore who sleeps out every night." "Is he stupid?" said the first. "When he wakes up at night, does he not see she's gone?" "God curse our lady whore," the other said. "Do you suppose she gives him time to think? She tips a sleeping potion in his drink, gives him the cup that knocks him out, and then she slips away and stays out until dawn. When she returns, she lights some incense, holds it to his nose, and he wakes up. An awful shame." When I heard these words, my lord, I went into a rage and could not wait for night to fall. When my wife returned, the feast was served, we had a bite, and went to bed. I only pretended to drink from the cup, then spit it out and made a show of sleep. Just as I lay down, I heard her say, "Sleep, and may you never rise again. I hate the sight of you." She rose and dressed, perfumed herself, took my sword, and left. Then, my lord, I got up. I followed my wife out of the palace and across the city to the gate. And there she spoke some words I could not understand. At once the locks fell off, the gate stood wide, and she walked out. I followed her through heaps of trash until she reached a hut with a brick dome and slipped inside. I climbed to the roof, and when I looked down, I saw my wife standing before a man, rough looking, sitting on a reed mat, dressed in rags, and I saw her kiss the ground before him. He raised his head and said, "Why are you late?" "My cousins were here drinking, playing, singing, having fun, each with a girl, except for me. I did not want to drink until you came." "Love of my heart," my wife replied, "you do not know that I am married to my cousin. Just the sight of him fills me with horror for my fellow creatures, and talking to him makes me hate all humankind. If it were not for you, I could not wait until morning. I would not wait till morning to reduce his city to a pile of rubble, a ruin for the owls and crows to haunt, a playground for the foxes and the wolves, and hurl every last stone beyond Mount Cuff." "You are lying," he said. "I swear that from tonight, if my cousins come and you do not, I will not see you, sleep with you, or let my skin touch yours. You play with us like toys. We are no more than whims to you, so go to hell." When I heard this, Lord, the world went dark before me, and I forgot where I was. My wife was crying, saying to him, "Darling love of mine, if you are angry with me, who else do I have? If you turn me out, who will take me in? Oh, my love, light of my eyes, my life. And she wept at his feet until he was appeased. Then she was happier, shed her clothes, and said, "Don't you have something for your little girl to eat?" "Look in the pan," he said. Lifting the lid, she found some fried rat bones and ate them. "And in that jug," he said, "there is some beer." She drank it, washed her hands, and naked now, lay beside the man on the reed mat. I climbed down from the dome and came in through the door, took the sword my wife had brought with her, and drew it, set to kill them both. I struck him first across the neck and thought that I had killed him. I failed to cut the veins, but sliced the skin and flesh around his throat and thought that I had killed him as he gasped for air. In this darkness, my wife pulled away, and unnoticed, I retreated, left the sword where I had found it, went back to the city, and returned to bed in the palace. In the morning, when my wife appeared, I saw that she had cut her hair and was in mourning dress. "Cousin," she said, "do not be hard on me. The news has reached me that my mother died. My father has been killed in war, and both my brothers lost their lives. One from a bite, the other from a fall. I have the right to weep and mourn." "Do as you please," was all I said. For a year she mourned and wept, and then said, "I want to build a mausoleum in the palace, a place of mourning I will call the House of Grief." As I said, "As you please." She gave the order, and the House of Grief was built with a domed roof that held a tomb. Then, my lord, she moved her wounded lover into the tomb. He was alive, but could no longer do her any good, could not eat or speak since I had cut his throat. Every day she went to him with drinks and broth, morning and night, and she did this for a year, as I, nursing my patients, said nothing. One day I walked in on her, and while she was unaware, and found her weeping, singing, "I look at you, your pain is mine and sharp. I lose you from my sight, and still it smarts. Oh, talk to me, my love, my only heart." "Cousin," I said, "enough. Your tears are of no use. Do not try and stop my grief, or I will kill myself." She said. I left her alone to mourn and weep another year, until one day I came in angry, exercised by something, and it seemed to me that my wife's grief had gone too far. I found her in the mausoleum by the tomb, saying, "My lord, I've heard nothing from you. For 3 years now I've been waiting for a word." Then she said these lines, O tomb, where is his beauty now? Are you the thief who stole that lovely brow? Neither a garden nor a sky, O tomb, how can you contain both sun and moon? Her verses fed my anger, and I said, "How much longer?" And then these lines, O tomb, where is his blackness now? Are you the thief who stole that dirty brow? O tomb, neither a toilet nor a mine, how then can you contain both coal and grime? My wife leapt up and said, "You dog, you did this to me, wounded my beloved and deprived me of his youth. For 3 years he has lain here between life and death. Filthiest of whores who sleep with slaves." I said, "Yes, it was me. I did it." Then I drew my sword to strike her, but when she saw that I wanted to kill her, she laughed and said, "Forget it, dog. The past is gone, the dead not coming back. But God gave me the power to get even with the one who did this to me, the man who lit this fire inside my heart." She rose and said some words I could not understand, and said, "By magic and by craft, become half man, half stone." And from that moment, Lord, I lived as you see me now, sad and helpless, unable to sleep or stand, neither among the living nor the dead.
When my wife did this to me, she cast a spell on the whole city, gardens, markets, fields, the palaces where your troops are camping now, and changed their residents who were from four persuasions: Muslims, magicians, Christians, Jews, Magians, to fish. Let me read that over again. And changed their residents who were from four persuasions to fish: the Muslim white, the Magians red, the Christians blue, and the Jews yellow. And she changed the islands into hills around the lake. If this were not enough, she strips me every day and with the whip gives me 100 lashes until my back is cut to ribbons and my shoulders bleed. Under my fine clothes, she makes me wear a hair shirt of coarse wool. And he began to weep. Young man, the king said, have you replaced one question with another? Where is your wife, and where is the mausoleum with the wounded man? The man, he said, is lying in the tomb next door. Every day at sunrise, my wife comes, strips and whips me while I cry and scream, helpless to move since I am half flesh and blood, half stone. Then she goes to her lover, gives him both broth to drink. Tomorrow she will come as usual. Young man, the king said, I will do something for you that history will remember, and it will make my name. Then they sat together, talking long until the night came and they slept. At daybreak, the king rose, undressed and drew his sword, entered the mausoleum, found it lit with lamps and sweet with incense, saffron balm. He went straight to the lover of the prince's wife, killed him, pulled him out, and threw him down a well. Then he put on the lover's clothes and took his place inside the tomb, his sword concealed under the folds of cloth. When, after a while, the witch appeared, she stripped her husband, took the whip, and brought it down on him as he cried, Cousin, mercy, mercy. You should have had mercy on me, she said, and spared my lover. After she had whipped her husband to her liking, she dressed him in the hair shirt and covered it with clothes. Then she went to her lover in the tomb with broth, as was her custom, entered the mausoleum, and began to weep and moan, repeating, Love, it is not like you to deny me. Our parting is my enemy's delight. Come to me, my life is in your sight. Love, it is not like you to hold back. Then she sang, For how long must I save your scorn? Have I not paid enough in tears? Beloved, talk to me. Beloved, speak to me. Beloved, answer me. The king, still undisguised, lowered his voice and said, there is no power and no strength except in God. When she heard these words, she gave a cry of joy and fainted. When she revived, she said, Did you really speak to me? Do you deserve that I should speak to you? Why not? She asked. All day, he said, you punish your husband. From dinner until dawn, he cries and screams, curses you and me, and his shrieks keep me from sleep. If it were not for this, I would have been cursed long ago. That is why I have said nothing until now. My lord, she said, with your permission, I will set him free. Deliver him, he said, and free us of his noise. She left the mausoleum, filled a bowl with water, spoke over it a spell, and the water bubbled as if in a pan over fire. She sprinkled drops on her husband, the prince, and said, If you were made this way or changed by the Creator's anger, stay as you are. But if you were crafted by craft and magic, return to your first form. The young man shook and stood, upright and whole and happy, and thanked God. Then his wife said, Leave my sight and don't come back. If I see you again, I will kill you. And she roared at him and drove him out. Then she went back to the tomb and said, My lord, come out and let me see your lovely face. In an altered voice, the king said, You have rid me of the limb, but not the body. What is the body? She said. It is the people of the city and its islands. Every night the fish lift their heads out of the lake to beg and curse me, and this is why I cannot heal. Go to them and set them free. Then come back to hold my hand and help me out. Delighted, she said. My lord, yes, yes, my love. Then she rose and went down to the lake. After the wife spoke words over the water, the fish began to dance. The spell that held them there was lifted, and they changed to people who resumed their lives and work. Then she went back to the palace, entered the tomb, and said, My lord, give me your darling hand. In a muffled voice, the king said, Come a little closer. She shifted, and he said, Come closer still. She came so near, their bodies touched. Then he drew his sword and drove it into her, slicing her in two, and she fell in pieces to the ground. He went out and found the young man waiting for him and congratulated him on being free. The young man kissed the king's hand, covered him in thanks, and blessed him. You will stay here, the king said, or come with me to my city. Or will you stay here or come with me to my city? King of the age, the young man said, do you know the distance between your city and mine? Half a day's journey, said the king. Wake up, said the young man. It is a full year's journey. You made it here in half a day because the city was enchanted. Still, said the king, will you stay here or come with me? Majesty, the young man said, I will not leave your side even for a moment. The king was glad and said, Praise be to God for giving you to me. You will be a son to me, my first. They embraced and, full of joy, returned together to the palace. The young man told his court that he was going on a journey. He spent 10 days preparing, gathering what he would need. Then he left with the king. The king's heart burned to see the city he had left a year before, and they set out with servants bearing gifts and treasures, 50 Mamluks and many guides. They journeyed day and night for a full year until, with God's good favor, they arrived. They had word sent to the vizier, who rode out to greet them with his troops and half the city's people. Having given up all hope of seeing their king again, they were elated, and to celebrate, they decorated every street with silk. And the vizier, having dismounted, kissed the ground before the king and thanked God for his safety. Then he led them back into the city. The king sat on his throne and told his vizier why he had been absent for a year, told him everything that had happened with the young man and his wife, and how he set the city free. Then the princes, lords, and nobles took their places, and the king honored them with gifts and favors. Then he sent for the fisherman, who was the reason for freeing the city and their prince. He had given them robes of honor. Do you have children? 2 boys, a boy and 2 girls, said the fisherman. The king had them brought 2, and he himself married 1 daughter, and the other he married to the young man, who was cursed. The son he took into his services as the royal mirror bearer. To his vizier he gave the kingship of the city with the 4 islands. He sent him off with food and fodder for the journey, and the 50 Mamluks who had come with them, and many others, charged with gifts and treasures for the princes of that kingdom. The vizier took his leave, kissed the king's hand, and left. The king, the young man, and the fisherman lived happy lives. The fisherman became among the richest of his age, and his daughters were the wives of kings. It took me a moment to realize that the king of another city traveled and found this lost lake in the hills and found this young man who told him why he was isolated, alone, and destined to live in that lake. And it took me a moment to go back to how the king helped him, or where this king came from. Both your microphones are off, by the way.
Thanks, Lise. Um, well, you know, there's a couple of things that we should uh, clarify. Mount Qef is a mountain range. It's an invisible mountain range that encircles the world, and within it is where the jinn and angels live. It is it is something they refer to the mountain range in the beginning of the story to see where the mountain range. So the other one is the Mamluks. The Mamluks are the ones who are owned. Um, it's a uh, it's a slave soldier. Um, these are usually men who were captured in different wars. They actually became a powerful military class in Egypt. So those are the Mamluks at the end. Um, so the story goes, why is Shahrazad doing this? Why is Shahrazad telling him this story? This should enrage him. Uh, but if you see the nuance in the reenactment, she is basically doing what we do with trauma treatment or trauma therapy. Is the person has to be exposed to their story while they are in the meditative state to be able to work through the pain and the disassociation of the traumatic events. So she is telling Shahrazad's telling Shahryar, the king, this story, and it's inflammatory, right? The witch comes back and she whips him. She's turned him half into stone. And so it's inflammatory. It's an inflammatory story for a man who's basically killed uh, so many women in the kingdom that there are very few left. So he's killed over 50, I think. It's like, so that's why she goes into the story. So if you're thinking, why does she go into the story? Why would she tell this story? This is so inflammatory. But that's what this is for. So there are scenes of torture, right? Where the witch comes back and she's turned him half into stone and half flesh, and she beats his flesh. Right? So these like horror stories, right? It's not like a regular story. So this is to activate the complex. And the complex is what defends against the trauma. So it's to activate Shahryar's complex to so she can release some of the associated material, the fear, the anger, the betrayal, the shame, the rage. What do you think, Dr. Eric?
Well, I found it interesting that in this story, the woman winds up being the worst person.
Yeah,
She's the one that, you know, tortures and and
yeah,
so I found most of the stories it's the men it's the men that are evil, and this one it's the woman that is evil.
yeah.
So
Inflammatory, activating.
you know, it'll be interesting to see if that has an effect on on her husband,
Yeah,
because she's been telling story after story after story, and he still hasn't, for lack of a better way of saying it, he still hasn't repented or changed.
No, but she's still alive.
She is still alive, but only because she's got him dangling on a hook.
He's in a hypnotic state.
Yeah.
And so she is using this this method um, as a treatment.
Mhm.
She is walking him through the trauma. What we do in Jungian Advanced Motor Processing, JAMP, we walk you through the trauma. She's walking him through his own trauma without telling his story,
Yeah,
but
and
she's telling his story.
I think she's walking him through his trauma with a female antagonist instead of a male antagonist. It's not that the female is evil and uniquely evil. This is the same profile. This
Mm,
is a woman who's justified in her vengeance and raises like hacking people down in order to get and protect what is hers and what where her love is. This is another person who's unjustified in the severity of her punishment upon other people without regard for their own drive. This
mm,
is another story of the same character now in a female role.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So so there is a lot of magic that's going on.
Yeah.
Um, we have a dark magician who is weaving a web of deceit and lies in the kingdom, and she turns the population into fish, and the fish are thrown into the lake, so the streets
Mhm.
are empty of people. So he not only has to save himself from the torture, he has to save all his people who have been turned into fish and
Mhm.
who now reside in the lake.
I think she left a door, or Shahrazad in her
Mm,
story. She did leave, and she implied that there is yet another story to
mm,
consider. So, with this witch woman,
mm.
the witch woman did say, "I'm doing this because of punishing the person who did this to me."
Yeah,
And so that's this is a I'm sure there will be several stories regarding that cause or that part origin, more of the origin
mm,
story of healing that event somehow, or bringing light to that event that makes someone feel justified in their vengeance.
yeah,
So it made her human. It made that witch more human again.
yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. It made the dark magician, which more human. So it depends on which definition you're looking at. They do use the term witch, but they also use the term dark magician.
Mhm.
So there's good magicians, there's evil magicians, there's good kings, and there's bad kings. There's just kings, there's righteous kings, and there's unjust and um, not righteous kings. So what we have is a story about character, who you are as a person, what you believe, and do you harm others? So there's a long focus on that by Shahrazad. I think you're talking about that, Lisa.
Mhm.
Well, um, next week we continue our stories with the three sisters of Baghdad. So until next week, we are the Four Archetypes, and this is the IFC. And as we always say farewell, I am not afraid.
I am
I'm
not
not
afraid.
afraid.
We are the IFC and we are not afraid. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks, everybody.